You are listening to the third segment of our four-part series, Herbal Tonics with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio. Hello, Susan. Welcome back to Time Monk Radio. And tonight we're going to be discussing bitter tonics and astringent tonics.
Thank you for welcoming me, Gemini. It's such a delight to be here with you and with all of you listeners as well, as we delve into the realm of tonics and start to see how we can use tonics to help us stay healthy and to feel better for longer in our lives. There are a lot of different herbs that are tonics, and I'm talking about a lot of them. Now, I don't want to leave you with your head spinning here going, oh my goodness, how am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to take all of these herbs and perhaps having you dump them all into one big vat so that you can take them all? Because, you know, I'm a simpler. I really don't like using a lot of herbs at once. So no, that's not what I want you to do. What we're doing is kind of like a survey course here, isn't it? We're surveying the realm of tonic herbs, and hopefully some of those will pique your curiosity. Some of them you will say, wow, that sounds like the one for me. Remember I was talking about hawthorn and how I listened to myself do my own radio show, and I said, wow, hawthorn, that's the herb for me. So hopefully one or more of the herbs that I am talking about will be something that you will say, hey, that's the one for me. Now, exercise is tonifying, and that's where most of us think about tonification is exercise. And certainly we don't all think that we have to be good at all forms of exercise or all kinds of sports. Most of us choose a few things that we do to keep our muscles toned up and to keep our cardiovascular system toned up. For myself, I do yoga once a week for an hour and a half, and I've been doing that for 50 years. I do Tai Chi twice a week, and I've been doing that for about 20 years, and I also walk on a daily basis. I walk between 2 and 5 miles a day, and I've been doing that for as long as I can remember. So that's certainly not all the different exercises that there are in the world, but those are the ones that I have found pay me the most benefit, give me the most, and work the best in my life. And that's what we're looking at with these tonic herbs as well. Not that I want you to use them all, but I want you to know that there's a variety of them out there and to kind of custom fit them to yourself. My friend, Isla Burgess, who lives in New Zealand, said that there were so many tonic herbs that she wanted to include in her life that this is how she figured out to make sure that she got them all. She chose her favorite tonic herbs, and she would use one of them for 6 weeks. And then she put it aside for the rest of the year, and she went for another tonic herb that she liked, and she used that one for 6 weeks. And in this way, she worked her way over the course of a year through all of her favorite tonic herbs and then was ready to start again. So that she had, remember we're talking about being rhythmical, that we want to have a rhythm or a pattern. And this is indeed a rhythm. Use it daily for 6 weeks and then not for the rest of the year. As a matter of fact, one of the bitter tonics that we'll be talking about tonight, American ginseng, that is the classical way here in the Catskills to use that. You dig up your ginseng root in the fall, and you chew on a little bit of it, and you do that every day for 6 weeks, and that's all you use. You don't do it again until the next fall. Let's go over the list of bitter tonics and astringent tonics. That's what we're focusing on tonight. Bitter tonics include buchu, dandelion, cronewort, also called mugwort, elecampane, fennel seed, American ginseng, milk thistle seed, motherwort, saw palmetto, black tea, green tea, vitex, also known as chasteberry, wild yam, yellow dock, ginkgo, ground ivy, and in Europe, gentian. And also, so long as it is not overdone, coffee is also a bitter tonic as well. The astringent tonics include American ash, aspen, avens, barberry, bistort, black haw, coptis, cranesbill, couchgrass, horsetail, oak bark, Oregon grape, self-heal, shepherd's purse, tormentile, witch hazel, lady's mantle, lemon balm, mullein, and raspberry leaf. We've got a lot of bitter and astringent tonics that we can choose from, and also one or more may grow more abundantly near you. Bitter tonic for many people is kind of what tonic is. It's a bitter tonic, and this comes about from the classic use of the bitter herbs before we eat. The bitter tonics tonify the digestive system, and so they are frequently used, especially in Europe, before the main meal. And we could contrast that to what's going on in the United States today, where if people have digestive problems, especially if they have acid problems, rather than tonifying the digestive system and seeing what we can do to make that person healthier, we simply give them a pill to turn off the acid that their stomach makes so that they don't have that acid reflux. We're not stimulating, we're sedating. And the effects of sedating are the same as the effects of stimulating, and that is less health. We tonify because we get more health when we tonify, and we tonify rather than stimulate or sedate. So, bitter tonics are digestive tonics, and they are frequently used before meals. Dandelion is one of my favorite bitter digestive tonics. Dandelion, first of all, helps the stomach. It helps the stomach to produce more hydrochloric acid. Now, many times when I say it helps the stomach produce more hydrochloric acid, people say, oh, no, I don't want that. I have too much already. But in fact, acid reflux is not caused by too much acid. I know it would seem like it was, but it's simply not the case. When there's enough hydrochloric acid in the stomach, then the food is dissolved and it leaves the stomach. And when there's not enough hydrochloric acid, then the food kind of backs up into the stomach and backs up to the esophagus. So that acid indigestion, that heartburn, is really because there's not enough hydrochloric acid in the stomach, and dandelion brings that up. It tonifies the stomach and the stomach's ability to make hydrochloric acid. Dandelion also tonifies the liver. It does not increase the liver's ability to clear drugs the way hypericum does, so it's safe to use dandelion even if you are taking drugs that your life depends on. But it does make the liver more efficient and more effective in all of its tasks, including the production and then the distribution of bile, which helps to break down fats. Dandelion even extends its influence down into the small intestine, increasing the ability of the small intestine to uptake nutrients and making sure that there is good mobility throughout the entire digestive tract. Not only that, dandelion is an amazingly generous plant. Any part of the dandelion can be harvested at virtually any time of the year and prepared in any way, and it will make an effective remedy. So we could dig up dandelion root. Ideally, we would get it in the fall, but it could be at any time. And we could make a tincture of that, or we could make a vinegar of that, or we could make a tea of it, or even an infusion from that. Or we could harvest the dandelion leaves, and we could make a dandelion leaf tincture. We could make a dandelion leaf vinegar, or we could dry those leaves and make dandelion leaf tea or dandelion leaf infusion. We could harvest the flowers of dandelion, and we could make dandelion flower tincture or dandelion flower vinegar, or from the fresh flowers, dandelion flower tea. A Swiss herbalist, Maria Trebin, preferred the dandelion flower stalk remedy, and she suggested that people harvest 10 stalks from the dandelion flowers. Does not need to have a flower on it. And to soak those in cold water overnight, and then to drink that the next day as a wonderful tonic. She thought of it pretty much as a cure-all tonic, and who's to say that it isn't? My daughter was working in her garden, and for various reasons she needed to dislocate a couple of dandelion plants. So she had the root, the leaves, and the flowers. The flowers were just starting to emerge. She took them home, washed the dirt off the roots, chopped them up, and made a tincture of all of that, the root, the leaf, and the flowers. Dandelion is a generous plant, and it is there to help give us greater tone throughout the entire digestive system. Dandelion is also tonic to the immune system, and because of that, has a great reputation for helping to prevent cancer. Milk thistle seed is another wonderful liver tonic, and it is a tonic, so far as I can tell, that is taken before the fact for greatest effect. So I often say to young people, if you're going to go out and have like what we might call a night on the town, or go out to a bunch of clubs or go drinking, please take some milk thistle tincture before you go out. Or perhaps an older person who's working has a hazardous profession, working with chemicals or working with plastic. Then I would say, please take some milk thistle seed tincture in the morning before you are exposed to that. Anything that we are exposed to that could be damaging to the liver, milk thistle tincture taken beforehand seems to prevent those problems. Certainly we can use milk thistle afterwards, but it's simply not as hepatoprotective, not as protective to the liver used afterward as it is used before. And if you're thinking, I wonder if that would work if I was doing chemotherapy, you are a brilliant thinker. That is exactly right. If you are engaged in chemotherapy for any reason, taking milk thistle seed tincture at least an hour, but no more than 2 before the chemotherapy treatment will protect your liver against damage from the chemotherapy, but actually ensure to it that far more cancer cells are killed. I remember sitting with an oncologist, and my friend had been using milk thistle tincture during her chemotherapy, and he looked at me and he said, I think that your friend is alive because of the milk thistle seed tincture. He says, often with this regime, we're not able to finish the treatment because the person gets so sick and liver enzymes go down so low, but we were actually able to finish it with her, and I know that it was because she was taking the milk thistle, and this kept her liver healthy throughout the course of treatment. She is, in fact, although she had metastatic cancer, alive more than 20 years later. We're not saying that the milk thistle cured the cancer, but we're saying that the milk thistle allowed those heavy-duty drugs to kill the cancer and protected her liver while that was happening. Motherwort is one of my favorite bitter tonics, but it's not necessarily a bitter digestive tonic. Motherwort is a bitter uterine tonic. There are 2 plants that we think of as the primary uterine tonics, the bitter tonic motherwort and the astringent tonic raspberry leaf. Both of these plants contain compounds that actually tonify the muscle of the uterus. Let me tell you a story so that you get an idea, again, of how a tonic would differ from a stimulant or a sedative. One of my apprentices who lived with me for almost 2 years had plain old menstrual cramps. She would get her period, and she would get cramps. They would knock her out. She wouldn't be in bed crying. She didn't get a headache. It wasn't terrible. She just had cramps, and she felt crabby and crampy because she had cramps. And she tried a variety of herbal remedies for those cramps, and they all worked. Ginger tea worked really, really well. Cramp bark was a delight. Catnip, yes, that worked just fine. She kept trying different remedies, and they all worked, But after a while, I said to her, but look, every month you have to come up with a remedy. And she said, okay, then I'm just going to stick with catnip. And she did. And she stuck with catnip, and catnip was an excellent remedy for her menstrual cramps. But if she didn't take it, she still got the cramps. And this was during the time that I was really starting to become allied with motherwort. And I said to her, would you help me? Would you take motherwort tincture to relieve your cramps instead of the catnip? And she was a little reluctant, but I did convince her to do that. And I had her do it in this way. The first month, when she first got the cramps, I asked her to take 5 drops of motherwort tincture. And this is a tincture made from the fresh flowering tops of the motherwort plant. And then, if that didn't relieve her cramping, 10 minutes later to take another 5 drops and to continue taking 5-drop doses at 10-minute intervals until she had taken enough to cause the cramping to stop, and to make note of how many drops that was. And then the next month, if the cramps came back, she was to take that as her starting dose. So she did exactly that, and she was able to control the sensation of cramping. I think she took 20 drops. I think she had to take it 4 times. And then I asked her the next day, I said, so do you need more motherwort today? And she said, well, no, actually, I don't, but that's actually pretty common. Whatever I take the first day gets me over the cramps, and then I don't have them for the rest of the time. And I said, okay, well, let's see what next month brings. And next month, she took the motherwort again. And the following month, she did. But by the 4th month, she reported that she no longer had those menstrual cramps. And that's what a true tonic does. We may take a tonic because it helps us to resolve a problem. But if it truly resolves the problem rather than stimulating or sedating, then eventually we no longer need that plant, or we no longer need it in the quantity we've been taking it in, or we no longer need it as frequently as we've been taking it. Now, another bitter tonic that doesn't necessarily affect the digestive system is Vitex, or chaste tree. And this is a direct tonic to the hormonal system. Interestingly enough, it appears to work in quite reverse ways for men and women. This was also known as chasteberry because it was given to monks, and it was given to monks to quell their sexual desires. In other words, to make sure they didn't have any sexual desires. However, when given to women, it does seem to, if not increase, certainly not decrease, sexual desires, and it definitely increases a woman's chance of conceiving and having a full-term birth. Chasteberry also is been proven scientifically to be extremely helpful for women with PMS. Now, what PMS stands for, could get into some pretty fun stuff there. I've always said it stands for patriarchal mindset, but then I met some 15-year-olds last year who said it stands for pamper me silly. And that when they are PMSing, they say to their friends, PMS, PMS, and it means pamper me silly or I'm going to bite your head off. And isn't that a wonderful thing for PMS to mean? But if you're thinking that it means pre-menstrual syndrome, that is usually what it means. And chaste tree has been shown, again, to be a tonic. It does need to be taken in fairly large doses. It does need to be taken for fairly long times, a dropper full or 2, up to 4 times a day, taken for a year, 2 years, 3 years, even 4 years is not uncommon. But once we get the good of what that has to give us, then we have gotten it and can come way down on our dose of the repetition of our dose. Saw palmetto is a bitter tonic that I have never taken, but I got really involved with it when I was writing my new book Down There, Everything You Need to Know About What's Below Your Belt. And saw palmetto, well, you've probably heard about it. The berries of saw palmetto are really amazing in terms of prostate issues and swollen prostate. And I asked, some men who were old enough to perhaps be having prostate issues if they would experiment with me and take some of the tincture of the berries of the saw palmetto. And one of the men said, well, he'd be willing to try it again, but he had tried it before, and it was not successful for him. And I asked him how he had tried it before, and he said, well, the capsules that you get in the health food store. And I said to him, well, my experience has been that taking herbs in capsules is generally not successful, and that when it is, it's probably more from placebo effect than from the actual herb, because it's very difficult for our bodies to digest any herb that is in a capsule. Well, he was pretty curious about that. And I had a contact in Florida where saw palmetto grows, and we were able to make some saw palmetto berry tincture. We had hoped to make it from the fresh plants, but it was kind of a dry year in Florida, and there weren't any berries that year. But fortunately, my herbal buddy there had some dry berries, and we made that and gave it to the people who had agreed to experiment. And I'm talking about this one man in particular because he was so thrilled. He said, wow. He said, taking this salt palmetto has brought me down from getting up 6 times a night to go to the bathroom to 1 or sometimes even less times a night. He says, if I had known that this is what I was missing, I wouldn't have told people that saw palmetto doesn't work. So it is important to remember that we're not talking about taking any of these herbs in pill or capsule form, and that we do need to know, what part of the herb and when we're harvesting that herb and how we prepared it and exactly what that dose is. Otherwise, it's not really herbal medicine. It's more like folklore, and I'm not against folklore, but I am an herbalist as well. Astringent tonics are interesting tonics. I had one teacher who said to me that astringent herbs cause all the cells in your body to do push-ups. What an image, huh? And she must have been able to read my face, because I probably went like slack-jawed and kind of glassy-eyed trying to imagine all of my cells doing push-ups in my body. And she laughed and said, well, you think about what an astringent is. An astringent is something that contracts tissue. It causes it to draw together. So think of an astringent around the cell, and it causes that cell to scrunch up. And then when it wears off, the cell goes back out again. So that's what I mean. She says, scrunch, release, scrunch, release. Isn't that just like doing push-ups? I said, okay, I can get that scrunch release much better than imagining my cells doing those other things. So the astringent tonics, interestingly enough, are frequently used externally to the body to deal with chronic problems, hoping that we can tonify them away and then be left with a good result. But astringent tonics can be used internally as well. And we talked about raspberry leaf as an important astringent tonic, beloved by pregnant women and midwives all over the world, because it is a uterine tonic. An interesting amount of kind of scary folklore has risen up around it. In some places, I have found midwives who said, well, raspberry leaf is a great uterine tonic, and therefore you don't want to drink it during the first trimester because it could cause an abortion because it's a uterine tonic. You know better, don't you? You said, wait a second, back there at the first show, Susan explained to us the difference between a stimulant and a tonic. That woman is thinking about a stimulant. She's thinking it stimulates the uterus, but it doesn't. It tonifies it. So it's safe to use in the first trimester, and you'd be right. And then there are other places on the planet where midwives say, oh, yeah, well, it certainly won't. I've never seen it cause any kind of miscarriage. No problem there. But you wouldn't want to drink it during the last, month or two because it could cause precipitous labor and it could cause you to go into labor. And you know that, again, they're wrong. This is a tonic. It's not a stimulant. Tonics don't push organs or organisms to go beyond their limit. Tonics strengthen organs and organisms so we can expand our limits. Yes, indeed. I'm reminded of the woman who said, wow, I had a home birth and I was in labor for 3 days before I was able to push my baby out. I said, really? Well, gosh, I guess that just goes to show what a great tonic raspberry leaf is, because you drank that during your pregnancy. And she said, yes, but what do you mean? I was in labor for 3 days. I said, yeah, you were able to be in labor for 3 days and able to push that baby out. And let me tell you, that's a fairly rare feat. And she looked a little excited and said, "Really? That's not the way it goes for everybody." I said, "No, indeed, it's not. But you see, toning up the uterus and causing the cervix to relax are two quite different things." So she had a greatly toned uterus, but her cervix was not in the mood to relax there. Mullein is a favorite astringent tonic of mine, and it brings a great ability to breathe to the lungs. I've seen asthmatic apprentices, some of whom walked around with their inhaler in hand all of the time, work with all of the nourishing herbal infusions, but especially mullein, and within 6 weeks be so untethered from their inhaler that when asked where it is, they don't even really know. Mullein is primarily used as an infusion, but the tincture can also be used. And one of my all-time favorite astringent tonics is witch hazel. Now, I have a personal connection to witch hazel because she was one of the first witches that I read about in Little Lulu comic books. But witch hazel is also a tree. Okay, it's a small tree. And from the bark of that small tree, witch hazel can be tinctured or distilled. As a matter of fact, distilled witch hazel is one of the few herbal remedies that you can walk into any drugstore and buy a bottle of. Just go to your drugstore and say, "I want some witch hazel," but don't drink it, because they put an alcohol in there that is poisonous to you. If you want to use witch hazel internally, you're going to have to get the witch hazel bark and brew it up into an infusion or make your own tincture. And why would you even want to do that? Well, one of the reasons that you can get witch hazel so easily in drugstores, and not just a bottle of witch hazel, but our little pre-moistened, pre-soaked towelettes, is that when there is a swelling, astringents reduce that swelling. And possibly some of the most painful swellings that people experience are veins that are swollen near and in the anus, also called hemorrhoids. And witch hazel is a towering astringent tonic to help clear the area of hemorrhoids, especially if used at the very first sign that witch hazel can so tonify the tissues there that they do not go on to become bigger and bigger. Likewise, tonifying the veins in the legs with witch hazel soaks and witch hazel wraps. What a wonderful way to use an astringent tonic. Oak bark is another marvelous astringent tonic. And it, too, is more likely to be used externally than internally. I'm thinking of a woman who I met in Germany, and she said, I had everything wrong with down there that could be wrong with down there. I had hemorrhoids. I had a uterine prolapse. I had a vaginal infection, she said, and I was going like crazy trying to deal with all these three things until somebody said to me, "Oak bark will deal with them all." I said, "Oh, I hope this person told you that when it comes to oak bark, herbalists really mean bark." And she said, "Yes," and that was so funny because I had already learned that when herbalists say bark, they really mean the inner bark. And I was wondering where I was going to get that. But then she said, "And really it's the bark, like from a wood pile." Well, she said, I took that oak bark and I brewed up a gallon of oak bark infusion, and then I heated it up, and I sat in it. And I have to tell you, after I did that 3 times, all of my problems down there were just bad memories. She said, I still keep some oak bark at home just in case any of it comes back, but basically none of it has come back at all. When we use tonics to help us deal with a problem, we get a lot more than just dealing with that problem. We get added health. That's why we want to use tonics. If you want to know more about herbs and more about tonics, you could visit wisewomanbookshop.com. That's where you'll find all 5 of my books: Wise Woman Herbal for the Childbearing Year, the Big Green Book for Everybody called Healing Wise, New Menopausal Years, The Wise Woman Way, Breast cancer, question mark, breast health, exclamation point, the Wise Woman Way. And down there, everything you wanted to know about what's below your belt, the Wise Woman Way. Also, at the wisewomanbookshop.com, you can check in the classes available at my online university or the correspondence courses that I offer, or you might even be interested in an apprenticeship, a live-out apprenticeship or a live-in apprenticeship, or some of the special events that I have going on throughout the year. I so appreciate your attention, and thank you for being with Susun Weed here at here at Time Monk Radio. Really enjoying being with you, Gemini, and all of our wonderful listeners.
Thank you, Susun. We'll look forward to chatting with you next week about food tonics.
Food tonics, our last one of the tonics. See you next week.
Thank you. This completes the third segment of our 4-part series, Herbal Tonics with Susun Weed at Time Monk Radio.